Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training, we are going to be talking about completing the coaching skills stack. And so inside of this training, we are continuing our theme of the art of transformation by learning the skills that are necessary for you to become an amazing coach, so that way you can guide others through their transformation. So in this specific training, we are going to be covering the rest of the coaching skills inside of the basic coaching skills stack. And so let's go ahead and jump right into this training. So as always, we do have the training outline available for you for future reference as well. So what are the actual coaching skills that we are going to be talking about inside of this training? So at this point in the module, you might be like, man, coaching skills, coaching skills, coaching skills. I see coaching skills everywhere. And so inside of this specific training, we are going to be going over 4 skills altogether. So we are going to be going over trusting yourself, tonality, bringing thoughts into reality, and transformational vocabulary. Now, the question you might have is, why are we knocking out all of these skills in one shot? Well, the reason is because of 2 things. Number 1, because there are no actual skills sessions for these skills. And then number 2 is because these skills are pretty straightforward to understand. And so therefore, we don't need to go ahead and have some detailed, elaborate training to be able to go ahead and explain them to you. Okay. Now, the other question is, why are there no skill sessions for these trainings? So although it is possible to have skill sessions for these skills, the truth is that this program is not designed to be a quote unquote, let's just practice coaching skills all day long type of program. Okay. This is a program that is helping you build a career for yourself in the remote wellness industry, so that way you can make $10,000 to $15,000 a month completely remote online. And so spending a bunch of time on each of these skills is not something that is going to be critical in order to help you get to where it is that you're looking to go, okay? And so if in the future there is a need in which we determine that there are other skills that are going to serve you with the goal of helping you make $10,000 to $15,000 a month, of course, we can expand on it. But from our experience at this point, additional skills are not needed from a coaching perspective in order to get you to where you want to go. So that is why we are not going to have skill sessions for these specific skills, okay? And then on top of that, it's important to note that none of these are going to be skills that you ever teach to your students directly. These are really just for something that you have for yourself as a coach. And so for that reason, these coaching skills knowledge, they are going to be very quick and punchy. So you're going to notice that inside of this training is going to be very quick and punchy. And the reason for that being is because we're just going ahead and filling in these trainings and just having the notes for these trainings there. So with that being said, let's go ahead and knock out these last few coaching skills. All right. So the very first skill that we're going to go ahead and talk about is trusting yourself. And so learning to trust yourself is one of the most important skills that you are going to have to install for yourself as a remote wellness practitioner, and really as a human being in life, period. Because so many people don't understand that learning to trust yourself is actually a skill. And do you remember what the definition of a skill is? Skill equals knowledge times reps. And so just like any other skill, once you get the knowledge and apply it enough times, you will get better at it. Now, yes, for some people, it will be easier than others, right? For example, for those who come from a background of having an unstable, dysfunctional family, maybe they have to work on this skill a little bit more. Maybe they find difficult trusting themselves or trusting other people. Yes, for them, this skill is going to take a little bit more work. However, there are other skills that these types of individuals will excel at, and then the students who don't necessarily come from that type of background are going to struggle with those other skills. And so don't get all like, oh, I come from this family background and all of a sudden I'm a victim and XYZ. Some of those things have strengths and some of those things have weaknesses, just like everything else in life, okay? And so, but the bottom line for all of this is that this is absolutely a skill that everyone can learn no matter what, period. And so trusting yourself is really all about allowing yourself to sit in a space of, you know what? I don't know. And that's okay. And that is honestly a very tough place for human beings in general to live in. And that's why it is a skill to be able to learn. Now, having said that, the question is, why is trusting yourself important? Because sometimes when we start learning something new, we struggle to hear our own voice and trust it. And so many people are quick to write off and say, oh, trusting your gut or trusting yourself, trusting your gut is not really a thing. But the thing is that science actually proves that trusting yourself is actually a process. It's actually a skill that you can get better at, right? So why should you trust your gut according to science? Gut feelings frequently push people to make decisions that they would otherwise avoid. Can trusting your gut actually be trusted? Pairing gut feelings with analytical thinking helps you make faster and better, more accurate decisions, right? So trusting your gut is scientifically proven. And what is the science behind a gut feeling? So yes, the gut feeling chemicals that you get are the exact same chemicals that your brain also uses when it thinks. And so yes, trusting your gut and learning to trust yourself and to be in tune with that intuition is a skill. And science absolutely proves it, okay? Now, I want to go ahead and talk to you about different scenarios in which it's going to be important to trust yourself. The first scenario I want to go ahead and talk to you about is learning to trust yourself in life in general. Because so many people struggle when they look into the future and they say, you know what, I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure this out. But if you really look at it and you look back at your life, every single time that you came up against a difficulty or a fork in the road in which you had to make a decision or something came up, you ended up figuring it out every single time, right? There was never a point in your life up until now that you said, yep, you know what? Can't figure this out. Time to just dig my grave and lie in here, right? There never was a time like that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to me right now. And so you survived all of it in the past, every single situation. And so why should you doubt that you will also be able to figure it out into the future, right? And so at the end of the day, trusting yourself in life is all about believing in your ability to figure it out when you get there. That's point number one. What about trusting yourself as an RWP? So as a remote wellness practitioner and as a coach, many times, not everything is going to go according to the outline. So yes, we are going to be providing you outlines and scripts and templates and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times things might happen where, you know what? You don't know what's going to happen on a coaching call. And so even though you have that outline, sometimes things don't go according to it. And so perhaps that you've noticed in the course of this module, while you were doing the skill sessions, right, there were moments where you said, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do here. I don't know what I'm about to say. And so those are the moments where you get to practice the skill of trusting yourself and trusting your gut. Does that make sense? So that's trusting yourself as an RWP. And then finally, trusting yourself as a student, right? There's many times that you might feel overwhelmed when you're going through a program. And this is also going to apply to your students. And they learn the skill of trusting themselves and say, you know what I got from this session, what I got from this coaching call, what I got from this training session, right? Maybe I didn't get all of it. Maybe I wasn't able to comprehend every single piece of it. However, there were points that piqued my attention, and those are the things that are going to be the most important for me to focus on for this upcoming week. And then I can always come back to everything else in the future. And so for you and your students, learning to be able to trust the process and trust that when you take the first step, that is going to ultimately lead you to the next step. That is another element, another skill that you are practicing in regards to trusting yourself as a student. Beautiful. So like I said, those are just a couple quick points in regards to trusting yourself. Really just this is general knowledge in regards to the skill of trusting yourself. And what we really are doing inside of this training is we are reframing really this concept of trusting yourself that people say, hey, just trust yourself, trust the process. And we're framing it as a skill. And we're saying knowledge times reps equals skill. And so in the context of life, in the context of you being an RWP, in the context of you being a student, those are all opportunities for you to be able to put in the repetition to be able to then acquire the skill of being able to trust yourself. Okay, so that is number one. The second skill that we're going to go ahead and talk about now is the skill of tonality. Like I said, this training specifically is going to be a lot more punchy, and you can see we're just going ahead and knocking it out. So let's go ahead and talk about the skill of tonality. Now, do you remember what % of communication we said was communicated through words? Do you remember what that was, right? We said that communication, all of communication, is broken down into words, tonality, which is voice inflections, and nonverbal communication, which is facial expressions. And so we said that only 7% of communication was communicated through the actual words. And then we also then said that there's tonality, which is the voice inflections. And so this is the point that we're going to actually talk about inside of this skill, which is the point of tonality, right? And so if you remember, we said that inside of a text message, if somebody says, I am here for you, there's no tonality, there's no nonverbal communication, there's no context. And so as a result, you have a completely different understanding of what was being said simply because of the fact that it didn't have all all of the levels or all of the percentage of communication. And so in previous coaching skills, we learned the importance of mirroring and matching to help build rapport, because ultimately this is the truth that you have to remember. It's not only about what you say, it's also about how you say it. This applies in coaching and this applies in life as a whole as well. And so in this skill that we're about to learn right now, I'm going to go ahead and show you the importance of tonality in communication, because ultimately the tone of your words changes everything. And so let me go ahead and show you an example that's really going to go ahead and hit this entire concept home. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at the example question of, why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Pretty straightforward question, very, very, very simple question. But here's the thing. We're now going to go ahead and show exactly how the tonality changes this question completely. Okay, so why don't I take you to dinner tonight? So let's go ahead and look at the first way that tonality can change this word. So let's go ahead and say that we were going to go ahead and put tonality and emphasis on the word you. So it says, why don't I take you to dinner tonight? And so here, the question here is not, hey, are we going to dinner tonight or not? It's, why don't I take you specifically to dinner, right? Why shouldn't I take Joe or Sally or Fred? Why should I take you to dinner specifically? So you see, just the emphasis and the tonality on the word, all of a sudden we're asking a completely different question and we get a completely different answer. Okay, here, let's look at number 2, right? The tonality on the word I. Why don't I take you to dinner tonight, right? Focus is placed on the word I. And so here, the question is now asking about yourself, because Sally's already going to dinner with someone, but the question now is asking, hey, why doesn't Sally come to dinner with us instead, right? Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Okay, what about the tonality on the word don't? Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Again, the question here and the emphasis has been placed on the word don't. And so now the question is asking, what are the reasons why we shouldn't take this specific person out to dinner tonight? Again, remember, a completely different question, a completely different answer that comes from this, right? Tonality on the word why. Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Again, the question here now is completely different. It's now a question of, what are the reasons why I don't take the person out to dinner, right? Is it because their car is broken? Is it because they can't find a babysitter? What is the reason why they are not able to actually go to dinner tonight, right? What about if we go ahead and talk about the tonality on the word take, right? Why don't I take you to dinner tonight, right? Again, completely different question now. And then here's some big ones right here. Tonality on the word dinner. Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? You see, tonality changes it all, because now the question is, why don't we go to dinner? Why don't we go to breakfast? Why don't we go to lunch? Why is it specifically dinner that we are going to, right? Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Why don't I take you to breakfast? Why don't I take you to lunch, right? All of a sudden it changes, right? Tonality in the word tonight. Why don't I take you to dinner tonight? Again, the focus now changes, and so now the question is looking for an answer to the time of the event, right? Hey, let's do it tonight, right? Let's go ahead and putting some urgency to it. And so you can see here through this example, we are looking at 7 different meanings, 7 different answers, all based on the same one sentence. We've shifted the meaning of the sentence simply by changing the stress of one word. Exact same letters, exact same punctuation. The only difference was the stress, the tonality of the words that has been changed. And so the answer to the question just depends on how the person interprets the tonality that we provided. And so our tonality plays one of the biggest roles in how someone actually understands the message that we are trying to convey. Pretty cool, huh? This is what I'm talking about when you understand the science of persuasion and influence and communication and learning how to be able to speak. You understand that these things that we take for granted, just speaking, right? All of a sudden, there's an entire science behind it. And remember, inside of this training, we're not going ahead and explaining all of the details of the science because it's not necessary for you right now. We're just opening doors. We're just planting seeds for you to be able to understand, like, wow, these skills exist and I can become a master of these skills. And this is a part of my career. As I become a remote wellness practitioner, I'm going to be able to practice these skills, okay? And then just a quick note in terms of tonality in regards to coaching and sales, there are literally entire books and training programs that I myself and the rest of the staff here at RWA have gone through over the last half decade that literally talk only about the importance of tonality on influence, persuasion, sales, and coaching. And so we are going to be touching base on them in upcoming modules, so that way you can learn how to become a master of influence and sales using tonality. But I did just want to go ahead and point that out, that tonality plays a massive role as one of the critical skills of how you are able to go ahead and get students to pay you $3,600 per student, is simply because of the tonality that you used in order to communicate with them. Crazy, right? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in upcoming modules when we talk about sales and influence and persuasion and things like that. Beautiful. Now, with that being said, we have now gone ahead and completed the knowledge piece of the tonality skill. And so now we've gone ahead and completed the trusting yourself skill and the tonality skill. We're now going to go ahead and talk about bringing thoughts into reality. So like I said, really quick, punchy training. That's how we are going ahead and knocking out these skills, bringing thoughts into reality. Here's a question. Have you ever stopped to wonder, what are words, right? Yes, I know it sounds like a meta question, but I want you to stick with me here for a second, because when you really stop to think about it, you realize that what words are just really labeled thoughts. And so words are just the labeled thoughts that we as humans agree on the meaning of. And so this means that the language that we use matters a lot, because how we say things is how we think things, okay? And so the words that we use literally reinforce certain thoughts about ourselves, about the world, etc. And so if words are just labeled thoughts, that means that when we write down words, we are literally bringing our thoughts into reality. I want you to think about how powerful that is for just a second, because thoughts are this abstract, intangible, untouchable thing, right? It's like this, okay, I had this thought. Well, what does that even mean, right? But then all of a sudden, when we start to write down either your thoughts or even the thoughts of your students, what you are doing is you're really starting to bring your thoughts into reality, all simply because of the fact that you are writing down the words. And so this is a skill that has an immense power behind it, because when we use this skill, both on ourselves and our student, that is when we can go ahead and bring clarity to what someone is actually thinking. And so if you can master the skill of writing thoughts, then through those words, you are able to go ahead and take something that overwhelms someone or runs someone's life, right? Because a lot of times people are like, oh, my thoughts, they're so overwhelming. My thoughts, like I just can't get my brain to stop thinking, right? Or like, hey, my thoughts are running my life. All of a sudden, when we start to write down words and thoughts, we're able to make these things more manageable. Now, some people do call this journaling. However, journaling is one of those words that a lot of people have a lot of baggage around. And so what we do is we actually reframe the topic or the word of journaling into just, hey, you're just bringing thoughts into reality, right? Because here's the thing. When you have precision in thought, that means that you have precision in language. And when you have precision in language, it means that you have precision in writing. And so if we can be precise in our language, we can be precise in our thinking. And so if we can ask the right questions, then we will get the right answers. And so there is so much more to this topic about bringing thoughts into reality and in terms of it being a coaching skill. Like I literally have been obsessing over studying this topic of thoughts and words and all of this kind of stuff for such a long time. It's something that I could definitely geek out on. But the truth is that it's not necessary for you to be able to get to where it is that you want to get to in order to be able to understand all of the intricacies of it. All I need you to know at this point is that learning to write down your thoughts is a skill that you can learn. That's the biggest thing that we want to go ahead and emphasize here in this section of the training. Because although personal development is a part of this program, because the truth is that without personal development and without working on yourself, you will not be able to become the person who can generate $10,000 to $15,000 a month. If you have not developed yourself, people are not going to trust you in order to be conceived or perceived as being valuable to them, right? So although personal development is a part of this program, it is not the main objective. And so for that reason, I am going to go ahead and hold back the urge of geeking out with you on the topic of journaling and bringing thoughts to reality. But ultimately, I just want you to know that with practice, this topic, this skill is absolutely a superpower when you learn to how to bring the intangible and turn it into the tangible. When you learn to take the thing that is untouchable and make it touchable and malleable by writing it down, okay? And so that's ultimately all you really need to know about this skill. Very, very simple and very, very straightforward. All we're doing is opening the door in your mind to understand, wait a second, if I actually write down my thoughts in the form of words, all of a sudden I can make them more manageable? Yep, exactly. That's all you got to know. Beautiful. Cool? Awesome. All right. So that is all really it is in terms of bringing thoughts into reality. So we've now gone ahead and touched on trusting yourself. We've talked about tonality. And now we have gone ahead and talked about bringing thoughts into reality. Let's go ahead and talk about the last skill for this specific training, which is transformational vocabulary. Transformational vocabulary is all about the words that we use and whether or not they actually empower us or whether they actually disempower us. And so we just talked about the importance of words and how writing down words brings thoughts into reality. Well, here's the thing. This also applies to the words that we use on a regular basis in our speech, right? In a previous training, we called these things identity statements. But here's the thing. Identity statements are just one piece or one part of the topic of transformational vocabulary, because identity statements were the words that we say about ourselves. But here's the thing. Transformational vocabulary refers to the words that we use to describe everything around us. Because ultimately the words that we use are going to determine the results that we have in our lives. It is going to determine what we create in the world and is going to determine who we become, all because of the words that we use. And so it is absolutely critical to be careful about the words that you use, not only in general, but especially when we are talking about ourselves or when we are talking about our students. And so the biggest thing that you have to know about this specific skill is that the words that you consistently select will shape your destiny. When understanding this coaching skill of transformational vocabulary, we understand that the way we represent things in our minds determines how we feel about life. Because remember, how we represent things in our minds is just the words that we use, because words are just labeled thoughts, okay? And so really what we are doing is when we have these words, we are creating mental images of what we think about something. We are creating frames about how we think about something. And so if the words that you are using are putting you into a disempowered state, if it is putting your students into a disempowered state, well, guess what? We're going to have to work on getting rid of those words from our language patterns and replacing them with words that are more empowering for us. And so what we have gone ahead and done is inside of the guide for this training, we've gone ahead and put together a list of words that are on the left side disempowering or may not be serving you to the highest level, and the things that you can actually replace them with in order to actually be able to change your language patterns and have a habit of a more empowering language pattern. Okay, so a couple ones that I want to go ahead and point out on here is say, hey, I'm feeling confused, right? That puts you in a disempowered state versus, hey, I'm feeling curious, right? Even as you say that, you can start to feel how that changes your entire state, right? In terms of if you're feeling frustrated, right? Frustrated puts you into a disempowered state versus, hey, you know what? I'm feeling challenged, okay? Challenged puts you in an empowered state, right? And so just these small tweaks, right? Don't write this off and say, oh, it's just a small thing. Remember, small things are easy to do and easier not to do, okay? And so do not discredit them just because they are small and easy. It's the difficulty in actually doing them consistently that actually matters, okay? What about this? Hey, I'm feeling insulted versus I'm feeling misunderstood. You see the difference there? What about this? Hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed compared to, hey, I'm feeling a opportunity to be able to increase my work capacity, my capacity as a whole, my ability to think, my ability to work, right? Instead of feeling overwhelmed. It's an amazing shift in a disempowered state to a empowered state, okay? And so ultimately, this is what you also have to understand about this topic of transformational vocabulary, is that there is a responsibility to your students when it comes to transformational vocabulary, because everything that we talked about in terms of words that you use for yourself also applies to the words that you use to other people around you. And so this is what we call speaking over someone else. It means that you are literally speaking at someone about them, okay? And so this is a responsibility that you have to understand that you have to everyone around you, okay? So if there are people in your life that look up to you, your spouse, people that are close to you, what you have to understand is you have to make sure that the words that you use about them are empowering them and not disempowering them. Why? Because the words that you speak at someone, especially those who are close to you, will be the words that they store in their mind, will be the words that they repeat to themselves over and over and over again, okay? And so for me personally, I will not tolerate any person in my life who consistently speaks disempowering words at me or around me. I will literally cut people out of my life who consistently say disempowering words to themselves and disempowering identity statements to others. I'll give them a couple shots. I'll explain to them this concept. I'll say, hey, what you are doing right now is not serving you to where you say you want to go. And I'll give them chance after chance after chance. And if eventually they just don't get it, well, guess what? I am ruthless about cutting those people out from my life because it is not going to serve me to where I want to get in my life, okay? And so what I do personally, not only to our students, not only to the people that are close to me, to my spouse, to my siblings, to all the people that are close to me, I only speak upon them words that are empowering them. Hey, I noticed you're so patient. Wow, you're so consistent. Hey, because you are such a patient person, would you be able to do this? Hey, I noticed that you're such a patient person, and even if it's not necessarily something that they have, even if they've only exhibited that character trait even once, when you tell them that they are a patient person, they will start to identify as that person, okay? And so when you do that, you are doing that is to empower them and allow them to be able to cement those empowering character traits into their personality, as well as the way that they think about the things that are around them. And so ultimately, this is what it means to have the coaching skill of transformational vocabulary. It means speaking into your student and pouring into them the words that are empowering them, okay? So it's very similar to what affirmations would do to someone who repeats it to themselves. But what's happening when you are an RWP coach and you are practicing this skill of transformational vocabulary is you are the living, breathing affirmation to your students. You are pouring into them positivity every single time that they meet with you and every single time that they interact with you. And so as a result, you are empowering them and changing their language patterns because of how you are pouring into them the vocabulary just by the usage of the words that you use. Pretty cool stuff, huh? I know. Like I said, we're not going to be geeking out on these topics too much. They really are just doors that we are opening and just touching on them very, very quickly. So with that being said, that really is the 4 skills that we wanted to touch on inside of this training. A very quick, very punchy training: trusting yourself, tonality, bringing thoughts into reality, and transformational vocabulary. Before we go ahead and close out this training, I do want to go ahead and make a note in regards to self-coaching, because just like we've talked about with all of the other skills inside of this module, a lot of these skills can be applied to yourself, and you can learn the skill of self-coaching. So it's almost like skills within skills within skills. And so the skills equals knowledge times reps. Well, guess what? You can practice these skills on yourself and learn how to be able to coach yourself through life as well. And so I just want to make a couple quick points here in regards to obviously trusting yourself. That is a very big self-coaching skill, right? That 100% applies to yourself. And so you can 100% apply this and coach yourself through difficult situations, because good self-coaches spend the time in their life cultivating the skill that is about trusting themselves, because they understand that once they acquire this skill, it's kind of like a video game, right? You're out there acquiring these skills so that way you can level up in life. Once you acquire this skill of trusting yourself, then even if it takes you years in order to learn, you're going to be able to have this skill, this superpower for the rest of your life. And that's why it's so important to be able to cultivate that, and good self-coaches understand that, okay? A note on terms of bringing thoughts into reality. Good self-coaches understand that those who spend time writing about themselves carefully become happier, less anxious, less depressed, and physically healthier. This has all been scientifically proven. And so good self-coaches use their writing and writing out their thoughts as a way to be able to reflect, because good self-coaches understand that we do not learn from experience, right? There's a lot of people that say, oh, you learn from experience. That's not true. I know plenty of people that have gone through terrible experiences where if they had learned from it, they would have come out better on the other side of it. Because the truth is that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And so good self-coaches understand that bringing thoughts into reality, right? Writing down your thoughts is one of the critical and most important ways to be able to reflect, okay? So good self-coaches don't fall victim to their negative connotations on journaling, because they understand that journaling is really the best way to learn how to calm your mind and simply put the monkey mind on paper, so that way they can go on with their day and that way they can reflect on things that are going on. Okay, so that is a couple quick points in regards to self-coaching when it comes to bringing thoughts into reality. And then finally, in terms of transformational vocabulary and what good self-coaches do, good self-coaches actually take the time to think about the words that they use and actually audit them. They ask themselves, what are the common words that they use and what is the meaning behind those words, right? They ask themselves, hey, I use this word overwhelm a lot, but what does it actually mean, right? Should I be replacing it with another word, right? And then on top of that, good self-coaches use another skill, which is the one we just talked about, bringing thoughts into reality, to be able to think about the word overwhelm. And so you can almost like skill stack using this, right? And so good self-coaches make sure that they are consistently using words that are serving them and coming from a place of empowerment rather than words that are not serving them, right? And that applies not only to themselves, but everyone else around them as well, okay? So these are just a few examples of how these skills, when coaching ourselves, can be used in order to help set ourselves up for success. And so good self-coaches know how to apply these concepts to themselves and exactly how powerful they actually are. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So like I said, let's go ahead and bring all of this together. Inside of this training, what we did was we just briefly and quickly touched on these 4 important skills inside of the basic coaching skills stack. Again, we did not need to expand or go into detail for these skills because they're not as critical as the ones that we spoke about before. However, it is important to just go ahead and plant these seeds, so that way in the back of your head you know that these skills exist, and that way when we refer to them in the future you know exactly what it is that we are talking about. Beautiful. Now let's go ahead and talk about commenting on the student community and your engagement question for this specific training. It's going to be very straightforward as we have been doing in all of these trainings. Number 1, what are your thoughts about this training, right? We talked about 4 quick skills. We talked about how important these skills are. What did you like and enjoy about this training? I know this was a punchy, quick one, right? And what are some of your biggest takeaways or ahas from this training as well? And then in terms of action steps, like we have inside of most of the trainings in module 4, very straightforward. Just go ahead and watch and study this training in full, number 1, and then just make sure that you do go ahead and complete the engagement question that we just went ahead and went over up top. Like I said, this was a quick and punchy one. Super pumped that you got through this. We are almost near the end of module 4. Super excited for you to go ahead and knock out the rest of this module, so that way we can go ahead and get into the super awesome, juicy module number 5. With that being said, this is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.